Okay. We probably should get going. Hold on. Give me a second here. Okay, I want to make sure everyone gets in because I have definitely something to say. All right. Okay. Let's just get going here. Um, if you haven't already been told, Thursday and Friday, this Thursday and Friday, you only need to check in on your Thursday class, block period 3, and then on Friday, your 4th period class. That doesn't mean you're excused from work from those classes. Is that those are the only classes that you actually need to check in. For this class, however, the way I'm doing it is that you will have a 3D test for this class. Hold on. So therefore, you don't even need to check in. What you need to do is during class on Friday, just go directly to your student view and the test will be there. Your taking the test will be your like signing in for the day. So you don't have to worry about um, coming into Zoom on Friday. Okay, well, let me let people in first so they know what the heck is happening. Okay, let me repeat that for those who came in late. Um, people just come in on time. They wouldn't be lost all this time every time we are doing something out of the ordinary. Okay, for this Friday only, all right? You do not need to come into Zoom to check in, okay? Just go to your student view and what you will see is the test, the 3D tests that actually I'm going to go over the topics today. And therefore, that will be your, like your attendance record that you did the test on that day. So let me repeat it one more time. Person came in late. Friday, you do not need to come into Zoom. Go directly to your student view during class time. And the test will be available to you at 9:55 and it will turn itself off at 11:15. So you need to finish by the end of the class or you'll be locked out and you get a 0 for the test. Okay? Be 15 questions like normal, and it's plenty of time to do 15 questions. And I will go over the topics today with you guys. Okay? All right. So let's go ahead. And does anyone have any questions before we get going? Cl minus 1, right? Or Cl minus. Then you do the crisscross rule. So the +2 of the calcium will go to the bromine. So you have Br2, and the -1 of the bromine will go to the calcium, but we don't write a 1. So it'll be CaBr2. So that's the right answer. Ca is B. CaBr2 is B. Okay? 4, what is the name of the chemical formula SF6? Well, what kind of compound or elements is sulfur and fluorine? Well, go to periodic table, right? Sulfur, nonmetal, fluorine, nonmetal. So it's going to be covalently bonded. When you have covalently bonded substances, you have to use the prefixes, right? So there's only one sulfur, but there's 6 fluorines, right? So we don't say mono, right, when it's at the beginning. So it'll be sulfur hexafluoride, and that would be B. Okay. Finally, the last question is a group of high school chemistry students are practicing how to write molecular compound names and formulas. They're attempting to write the formulas for the following molecular compounds: carbon tetrachloride, sulfur dioxide, and dinitrogen monoxide. So these are all covalently bonded because they use the prefixes, right? So so this tells you how many atoms there is. There's 1 carbon, 4 chlorines. So it'll be CCl4. So this is correct, right? We're going to find which ones are correct and which ones are incorrect. So this is correct. Sulfur dioxide, right, is this one, right? 1 sulfur, 2 oxygen, and dinitrogen monoxide, 2 nitrogens, 1 nitrogen. So this one right here. So the ones that are correct are CCl4, SO2, and N2O. So those are the correct ones. The ones that are incorrect are these right here: CaCl4, S2O2, and O2O. Okay. So now that you have we've gone over the topics, go ahead, go to Google Classroom and do the quiz. The quiz is the names and formulas of compounds. I'll give you 5 minutes to do this. That's all you should be able. That's all you should really need. So we'll stop this at 11:39. Let's make it 11:40. All right, give you 6 minutes. So go ahead, go to Google Classroom and do it. If you don't do it now, all right, you're gonna have to email me and tell me when you do it, or you get it, or it stays as a 0 until you actually make it up. Okay. So go ahead, go to Google Classroom, please, and do the quiz. All right, Nicole, you need to go to Google Classroom and do the quiz. So get you for coming in late. You have until 11:40. Or Cl minus. Cl minus 1, right? Or Cl minus. Then you do the crisscross rule. So the +2 of the calcium will go to the bromine. So you have Br2, and the -1 of the bromine will go to the calcium, but we don't write a 1. So it'll be CaBr2. So that's the right answer. Ca is B. CaBr2 is B. Okay? Before, what is the name of the chemical formula SF6? Well, what kind of compound or element that's sulfur and fluorine? Okay. Before, what is the name of the chemical formula SF6? Well, what kind of compound or element that's sulfur and fluorine? Well, look at your table. Right? Sulfur nonmetal, fluorine nonmetal. So it's going to be covalently bonded. When you have covalently bonded substances, you have to use the prefixes, right? So there's only one sulfur, but there's 6 fluorines, right? So we don't say mono, right, when it's at the beginning. So it'll be sulfur hexafluoride, and that would be C. Okay. Finally, the last question says a group of high school chemistry students are practicing how to write molecular compound names and formulas. They're attempting to write formulas for the following molecular compound: carbon tetrachloride, sulfur dioxide, and dinitrogen monoxide. So these are all covalently bonded because they use the prefixes, right? So this tells you how many atoms are. 1 carbon, 4 chlorines. So it'll be CCl4. So this is correct. Right? You want to find which ones are correct and which ones are incorrect. So this is correct. Sulfur dioxide, right, is this one, right? 1 sulfur, 2 oxygen, and dinitrogen monoxide, 2 nitrogen, 1 not nitrogen. So this one right here. So the ones that are correct are CCl4, SO2, and N2O. So those are the correct ones. The ones that are incorrect are these right here. CaCl4 is. Miguel, if you haven't finished the quiz, go to Google Classroom to do the quiz. Couple more minutes. Those still working. Okay, you should have finished by now. So what I want to do now is I want to review for the 3D assessment that you guys will have on Friday. Okay, so let's go ahead and review that. All right, I'll go ahead and share my screen. So this is essentially like the questions that you'll get on Friday, all right, on the test. All right, 3D, and it's on chemical bonding because it covers the whole unit, right? Because we're done with the unit. We're starting fresh on a new unit on Monday when we start our hybrid, okay? So here we go. Let's take a look at this one. It says, select the answer that shows the words in the correct order to complete the sentence. The octet rule states that the atoms tend to form bonds so that each atom has 8 electrons in its outer or valent shell. Okay, so we're looking for the word 8 here, or electrons, I mean, and valence here. So the one that matches that, it's here, B. Electrons and valence. Okay. Next question is which of the following Lewis structures correctly represent calcium chloride? Now, if we look at calcium, where's calcium? Here, right? It's in the second column here. So that means it's going to lose the 2 electrons, so it's going to be a +2. Right? So it's going to be a +2. And then chlorine right here is 7, right, in the valence electron. So it's going to gain 1 instead of losing the 7. It's easier to gain 1 than lose 7. So it's going to be a -1. So therefore, we know that calcium charge on calcium be a +2 and be a -1 for chlorine. Now, in this type of Lewis structure, the one they showed you in the book, you show the charges, right? So which one shows the correct charges? Well, this one, A, does. B doesn't because this one doesn't show a charge, so that's incorrect. This one is not correct because it doesn't show the charge on +2. So B and C immediately we can eliminate. Okay. Then we go, all right, we got to make sure we have the correct number of valence electrons, right? Well, chlorine has 7, and there's 2 of them. So therefore, there should be 2 times 7 is 14. And then calcium has 2. 14 plus 2 gives me 16. So I should have a total of 16 valence electrons showing, right? So we said either A or D. Well, if we count for A, we have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. Well, this is wrong, because there's only 14 here. So immediately we can say this is wrong. So the only one that's left is D, but let's double check. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. Oh, that's it. So D is the right answer. That one there. Okay. Next one. It says, which of the following statements about metals are true? Select all that apply. Well, can metals be drawn in the wires? Yeah, they can. So A would be when we pick. Metals have low melting. No, they tend to have high because remember they're ionic. They have that strong sea of electrons around it. Okay. Metals can be hammered into different shapes. Okay, so that one's correct. So far we got A and C. Metals in solid form specific crystal structure. Well, when you hear crystal structures, you think of ionic bonds. Metals do not form ionic bonds with themselves. Okay, they form what they call metallic bonds. They have sea of electrons which do not have crystalline structures. So that is incorrect. Right? So far, only A and C. Metals are not able to conduct electricity due to state. Nope, that's incorrect. They do conduct electricity because they have that sea of electrons. And this is the sea of electrons hold metal and ions together through the entire, well, no, because metals do not take in electrons to make them anions. Metals tend to lose electrons. They become cations. So that is incorrect. So the only ones that is correct are can be drawn into wires and hammered into shapes. Okay, so those are the only two. Next one. It says, which of the following statements about covalent bonds are true? Okay, select all that apply. Covalent bonds are composed of metal and no, we know that's incorrect. Covalents are 2 non-metal. So immediately, that's wrong. Covalent bonds hold atoms together in discrete molecules. Yes, covalently bonded substances are in molecules. So that's correct. So we know B is right. Covalent bonds form when atoms of nonmetals are close enough together, close enough to each other, so they're orbital. Yeah, right, because they share those electrons. So that's correct. And D, covalent bonds are single, double, or triple bonds. Yeah, that's correct. Right, we saw that. Covalent bonds hold ion. Well, no, it's ionic. Covalent bond and ionic should not be in the same word. So it's B, C, and D for this one. Okay. Next one, it says chemistry students are learning about Lewis structures. Their instructor asked them to draw Lewis structures for carbon dioxide using both electron dots and bonds to show bonding relationship. Which of the following structures are correct? Select all that apply. Well, we see carbon and oxygen. So this is carbon dioxide, right? So we look at carbon. There are 4 valence electrons and oxygen is 6, but there's 2 of them. So 6 times 2 is 12 plus 4. So it should have 16 total, right? 16 total. And all the atoms should have 8 around them, right? Because this is like the ones we do. So let's count up this one. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. So this one has the correct number. Does this one have 8 around it? 2, 4, 6, 8. Oh, that's good. Carbon has 2, 4, 6, 8. That's good. Oxygen has 2, 4, 6, 8. So it looks like this first one is correct. This one is not correct because you can see 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, only 14 here. Plus this one only has 2, 4, 6 around it. That's correct. Incorrect. Take a look at this one. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. So number of electrons are right. So oxygen has 2, 4, 6, 8. Carbon has 2, 4, 6, 8. This oxygen has 2, 4, 6, 8. So it looks like this is also correct. Remember, you can do each pair by lines too, right? So it looks like 1 and 3 are correct. I can see right now this is incorrect because there's not enough around oxygen here for it to be correct. So this one is incorrect. So it looks like 1 and 3 are the correct answers. Okay. Says organic chemists identified 4 liquids of having volatilities that they want to test further. They want to compare the overall volatility and the intermolecular forces of these liquids. Look at the picture. For closed beaker, the circles indicate the amount of liquid volatility. A beaker with a large number of circles have more liquid volatility than a beaker with only a few circles, which correctly ranks liquids in order of increasing intermolecular forces. Now, the stronger the intermolecular force, the less number of molecules that they will have. So this is the strongest, then comes this is the next one, then it's the next one, and this will be the weakest. So they want you to show from the weakest to the strongest. So it's going to be reverse order. So it'll be 4, 3, 2, 1. That would be A. Okay. 7. Which of the molecules has the highest boiling points? Well, the ones with the most molecular bonds will have the highest boiling point. So in this case, it would be 4. That was easy. Okay. Name the formula PbCl4. Well, Pb is lead, right? So Pb is lead. And Cl is chlorine. Lead is a metal. Chlorine is a non-metal. So this is going to be ionically bonded. Lead is a transition metal. How do I know that? Let's take a look. Here's lead, Pb. It is somewhere around here. I know it's around here somewhere. It's heavy. There, right here. Right. It's one of the ones that have more than one ionization. So therefore, we have to use Roman numerals, right? The only one that has Roman numerals is B, but let's double check, make sure that's the right one. Well, chlorine's a -1. How do I know that? Well, chlorine is here. 7 valence electrons is going to get the 1, becomes a -1. So therefore, the overall negative charge is going to be -4 because there's 4 of these chlorine and each one is -1. So that's going to be a -4. So that means lead has to be a +4. So that has to be lead fluor chloride. So that's the right answer. It says the table shows the melting points of different compounds containing the element bromine. Which of the following statements are supported by the data? Select all that apply. Okay, so look at this. Bromine here. These are bonded with metals. These are non-metals, all right? Melting point from high to low. It says all the compounds exist in a solid state. We don't know that. So we can't choose that one. The compounds in which bromine bonds with the metal have higher melting points than compounds in which they are bonded with non-metal. Yeah, here are the metal ones. Here's the non-metal ones. Have higher melting points. So B is one we would select. The compound with the highest melting point is made up of ions held together by ionic bonds. Yes, this is metal, non-metal, ionic bond. That's correct. We can say that. The compound with the lowest melting point is made up of molecules held together by intermolecular attractions. Yes, because here, right here, intermolecular attractions are covalently bonded, right? They're held together, not very strongly. So that's correct. The melting point of CBr4 suggests that it can be classified as a no. We don't. That's incorrect, right? Because such a low melting point anyway. We can't say it's a ionic. It takes more energy to overcome the attractive forces between particles of solid LiBr than it does overcome the attractive forces between solid PBr3. Well, we don't know this is solid, right? So we can't say that. So it looks like it's going to be B, C, and D. And yes, and F. Oh, actually, we do know this. I take that back because it takes a higher melting point, lower melting point. Okay, we don't necessarily know that it's solid, but we know this is a higher melting point, lower melting point, so it takes more energy. So it's B, C, D, and F. All right, are the ones. 10. It says the following figure shows the bond formation of sodium chloride, which is a compound commonly known as table salt. Select the answer that shows the numbers in the correct order to complete the sentence. A sodium atom has how many valence electrons? Well, here you go. 1. You see only 1 there. So 1 would be 1, so it's either D or 7. And then it says the chlorine atom has how many valence? Well, you can count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Right, so 1 and 7. So the answer would be A. Okay. Okay, which of the statements are true once the sodium chloride bond formation shown in the figure takes place? Select all that apply. So here's after the bonding, right? Resulting sodium cation has a stable octet in its valence. Yes, it does. There's 8 in there. Resulting chlorine ion has a stable octet. Yes, it has 8 in the outer shell. The electrostatic attraction between the positive ion and negative chlorine forms a no. Nonpolar means covalent. That's not correct. This is ionically bonded. So C is not correct. The electrostatic attraction between the positive ion and negative ion forms not a polar. Nope, it's not covalent. So D is wrong. The electrostatic attraction between the positive and negative forms an ionic bond. That's correct. So A, B, and E are the correct ones. All right. Take a look at this. It says, 3 figures show that in a game of tug of war, the knot in the rope is being pulled towards opposite sides of the players. The tug of war game, showing the figures represent the way that atoms are in a tug of war for bonding electrons. And a lot of times this is in the covalently bonded electrons. Okay. And when we talk about the different types of pulling, okay? Which of the tug of war best represents 2 bonded atoms with electronegativity differences that are less than 0.4? Remember the range? If it's less than 0.4, it's covalent. So they pull on the electrons equally, they share. So the one that best represents that would be A, because the other ones look like they're pulling more toward one side than the other. Okay, for this one now, for this question is which figure best represents a bond made up of 2 atoms where electronegativity is between 0.4 and 1.8. Remember, that is when one is just slightly stronger, right? So which one shows that one is slightly stronger? That would be B. Okay. And this next question is calculate the electronegativity between sodium chloride atoms. And remember, if it's below 0.4, it's covalent. Between 0.4 and 1.8, what we call polar covalent, where one is just slightly stronger. And then above 1.8 is one is really strong and it gets pulled all the way over, and that becomes an ionic bond. If we look at the difference here, this is a 2.1. 2.1 is greater than 1.8. So therefore, it's ionic. So one is being pulled a lot harder than the other one. So that would be C. Okay. Then finally, the last question is, which of the following elements behaves most like the team pulling the hardest at point C of the tug of war? So here we look at which one is the strongest, or that has the most, that is the most electronegative, that attracts the electron the most. We have to go to the periodic table for that. All right. So this is lithium, beryllium, boron. So it looks like it is this top of this period here. Remember, in a period, electronegativity increases from left to right. So we just got to find one that is farthest to the right. And in this case, it's the fluorine. Fluorine is the most electronegative. So therefore, the right answer is fluorine. Okay, so there you go. Fluorine is the right answer. So that is what you're going to be taking the test on Friday. Remember, you do not need to come in to check in. Just go right to your student view at the beginning of class and start in on the test. The test will turn itself off right at 11:15. Okay? So make sure you do that. Now, for today, I have one last assignment. It is a naming assignment. It is in Google Classroom. It's called Naming Compounds Practice Number 1. Now, I'll give you guys a hint. Just you can Google the names and the formulas and it will give it to you, right? Now, once you get that assignment done, you have to get it done by the end of tonight, 11:59 tonight. Once you get it signed, go to your student view. You should have the assessment up right now in your student view for that assignment. Then go ahead and just enter in your answers for that, and that will be your score for the day for this. Now, if you do not do it by tonight, I will automatically give you 50%, and then you can't change the grade. Right? 50% is not passing, really, right? So if you want something higher than 50%, make sure you get it done and then turn it in. Okay? Are there any questions?
I'm going to try to experiment with this new board again today.
This was just a bag with a tripod came in.
Oh, okay. Okay, we're getting there. Hang tight. Almost there. So basically what I'm going to do here in just a moment. Remember last week, well, first off, let me turn my camera off so I don't have the multiple image. Okay, so I'm going to attempt to play a video for all of you through the board. Also, remember I face planted the other day when I tried this, but got the camera set up to where I can actually sit here at the desk and move it. There's the podium where I'll be sitting. There's the chair, there's the door, there's the mural, and there's my left hand and the screen. I'm sure you're all extremely impressed to know that I figured this out. Okay, so that's the first part. Now here goes the second part. So okay, the risk of sounding like a cell phone commercial. Can you hear me? Michael, that's what I do. I don't even know if you can hear me. Can anyone hear me? Yes. Does it sound weird? Okay, it sounds weird to me because it's echoing. And that's, just what I want to hear. Hang on just a second. Shut the door. So I guess that's the good news, bad news. The good news is you can hear me. The bad news is I can hear me. I'm 3'6". So you were correct. Sounds distant, shoot. Well, and that makes me wonder, okay, so I think the microphone is picking up out of the TV. Ooh, this is gonna be weird. All right, here goes nothing. Maybe literally here goes nothing. That's not what I want. So just out of curiosity here, did I just get louder a second ago because I was standing next to the board? This is great when somebody comes in with no explanation and they just see an empty classroom. Okay. Let's try this here goes nothing thing again. Uh-oh, I hear feedback. That was no good. Oh, in the event. In the event that you're wondering, I'm not going to be doing the entire class. This is only going to be about 5 minutes. Just a second. So all of a sudden, no, So I had it off and I was talking, and then all of a sudden it just started doing this.
Coming in through this one here.
I did.
Where's the? There.
Mm-hmm.
So we're speaking in there.
Okay.
Turn off that. Turn off the
That's it.
Yeah, because we're speaking into two different speakers.
Oh,
So if you have this on, it'll just come through here now.
okay. You can still hear us?
We should be speaking into this now, unless it's unmuted. Is it unmuted over here?
It should be, yeah. Yeah, all right.
Yeah,
They can
okay,
still hear us.
sorry.
What just happened there?
Uh,
Oh. Is this fun for all of you? If nothing else, you should be laughing, right?
we just gotta get this back up.
See, it's all good. Everyone's really,
I'm used
really
to seeing the
patient,
little zoom button over here.
except for Michael's kind of impatient. But you win some, you lose some.
You just gotta get back to your screen. Oh, yeah,
Right.
right here. Yeah, or
No, it's
whatever.
this one right here.
Okay, yeah. So it should work now.
Should, yes. I just want to check again real quick though, just to make sure that Nevaeh's yeah was for my question. You can all hear me, yes? Okay.
All right.
See, I told you Michael was impatient.
Yeah, yeah.
It's all fired up.
Yeah, we could only have one mic and one output, one input and output at the same time, so
Right.
that was it. You guys
So
got it.
that now I know. Okay,
Yeah.
good. It's just weird that it wasn't doing that before. And then all of a
Yeah.
sudden it just.
Because we had,
started.
because it was coming through both of them, yeah, that's good.
Okay, here we go.
Did you share with video too? Share sound? When you screen share?
They can hear
Hey,
it.
Black Ops. I am so excited to be able to welcome you back on campus. We know how excited you are to see your teachers and friends, but there are a few important things I need you to know before coming back.
Let me know if you can't hear
All
it.
students will be back in class. Some students will remain in distance learning. Your parents or guardians were provided information on both the hybrid and distance learning models and
I'll let you-
select the right time for you and your family. The students returning in in-person learning via the hybrid model have been divided into two groups called Cohort A and Cohort B. If you selected distance learning, you'll be listed as DL. You can check your cohort by logging into Student View and clicking on the link that says Student Info. On Mondays and Tuesdays, Cohort A will be on campus, while Cohort B and those students who choose distance learning will be at home on Zoom. On Wednesday, all students will work from home and meet through Zoom. On Thursdays and Fridays, Cohort B will be on campus, while everyone else is at home working virtually through Zoom. Be sure to review the LQHS hybrid bell schedule for class start times.
Prior to arriving at school or to the bus stop, parents are required to complete a daily health checklist on their students. Parent daily health checklist for students includes: does your child have a fever? A fever is defined as a temperature of 100.4 or higher. Is your child experiencing known COVID-19 symptoms, such as chills, cough, fever, shortness of breath, respiratory illness, sore throat, or new loss of taste or smell? In the last 14 days, has your child been directed to self-quarantine by a physician? Has your child been exposed to anyone who has tested positive for COVID-19 in the past 14 days? If the parent can answer yes to any of these questions above, they must not send their child to school and should follow public health guidelines regarding testing for COVID-19 virus. The absence will need to be reported to the school. The student will not be penalized for the COVID-19 related absence and can participate through distance learning if health conditions permit. Staff employees must self-screen for COVID-19 symptoms as well. We ask that you stay 6 feet from other students as you wait to be checked in. Once you get to the gate, you'll be greeted by an administrator or security agent. We will wait to see that you are wearing a mask and your school ID. Students who have forgotten their mask will be provided with a disposable one. As students make their way through the gates and onto campus, students will be asked to wear the appropriate lanyard and continue to adhere to our school's dress code. Please see your student handbook. Once you arrive to campus, it is important to know that students may enter campus through two designated gates. Gate 1, tennis court area, and Gate 2, parking lot on Doomhoms Road. Students will also have an opportunity to be served breakfast. Each table will be labeled to ensure that students are maintaining a safe distance of 6 feet. Once through the gates, you can head directly to class or grab breakfast and take a seat at a lunch table. The cafeteria will provide breakfast from 8 a.m. to 8:20 a.m. Remember, if you are eating at a picnic table, seating is 6 feet apart. There is no hanging out in the quad or the hallways.
We have worked very hard to put safety measures in place throughout school. Air filters have been placed throughout classrooms, and your desk will be 6 feet apart. There are hand sanitizing stations throughout school and lots, and there's signs and posters to remind you what to do and the rules to follow. All of our classrooms have been outfitted with portable HEPA air filters, plexiglass shields at teacher desks, and hand sanitizer stations for the protection of our students and staff. Restrooms will be open for student use, but every other stall and sink will be closed. Remember to maintain social distancing when inside the restrooms. Pay close attention to the directional signs in the hallways and staircases in the 1200 and 1300 buildings. And remember to walk to the right side. As you enter your classroom, you'll use the hand sanitizer dispenser mounted on the wall near the door. Head to an empty desk that is furthest from the door. You'll be given a wipe to clean your desk and chair. Once in your seat, get out your Chromebook and be ready to begin class. It is important to charge your Chromebook every night, as you will not be able to move seats to charge it. Once class is over, teachers will dismiss students by allowing their closest to the door out first, and then those across the room. Now, let's take a look at what in-person learning is going to look like. All classrooms have received technology upgrades, including large format touchscreen displays for the inclusion of students attending virtually. The devices are supported by voice amplifiers and huddle cams. The above technologies will enhance distance learning and support La Quinta's transition to a hybrid setting. At the end of each day, students will exit the campus one of 4 ways. Gate 1, tennis courts. Gate 2, June Palms Road. Gate 3, next to attendance office. And Gate 4, the bus lane. Students receiving lunch will collect their items as they exit the campus. The grab-and-go lunch will be consumed off campus. If you have any questions, please contact the school office. We look forward to seeing you on campus soon.
Okay, I suppose that was a success. Stop share, all right. Yeah, sorry about the choppiness. And I don't know what it sounded like. Oh, that's frustrating. Because yeah, on my screen where I'm usually looking at all of you, well, I guess I'm looking at the camera, but you know what I mean. It was really bad, like a slideshow. Which then makes me think, oh, well, anyway. So here's this bit of news. Not bad news, and it's totally optional. Let me repeat, totally optional. So I found the animated version from 1954 of Animal Farm, and we're not going to watch it in class just because we're not. However, for those of you who are more like visual learners, it might be helpful for you to watch it. It's an hour and 9 minutes, and it stays pretty close to the book. So, you know, we always talk in education now about rereading. Well, this would be kind of like rereading in that you're watching it just to get, it's like a glorified summary, I suppose, if nothing else. Ideally, you know, you'll read it or you've been reading it, but again, it's just like a bonus. So I'm going to put that on the classroom stream because, you know, tomorrow you're not meeting with me. I think you know that. You are, here we go again with my new favorite line. My understanding is that you're not even going to have to fill out a form for attendance. Now, you are going to want to check Google Classroom because if that information changes, then you'll see an attendance form and you just fill it out and that's it. But we're not going to meet on Zoom. So this is actually today the last ever class that's what school has been to this point. It's all right, don't cry, we'll get through it. I'm going to go ahead now and start chapter 10 so that we can get through it because that took a little bit longer, you know, my experiment. And it also occurred to me that there's a chance that you haven't heard anything that I just said. Oh no, okay, there we go. All right, for just a second here, I'm going to mute this one, so I'm going to disappear. And now we're back on the. That was an absolute nightmare. Okay, back, right? You hear me okay? Or you don't hear me okay? Ah, okay, good. Whew. Leaving me in suspense. Okay, chapter 10. There is no Kahoot at the end of this. We're just going to read it. When the book is over, that's it. But one more thing, again, do check Google Classroom tomorrow. I'll have a journal prompt for you that's kind of like a wrap up of this. And again, I'll have the animated link. I did get it unblocked for you on YouTube, so you should be able to watch it. And then we will move on in a new setting next week. How's that for suspense? Where's my share button? Ah, there we go.
Long live.
Whoa.
Chapter 10. Years passed. The seasons came and went. The short animal lives fled by. A time came when there was no one who remembered the old days before the rebellion except Clover, Benjamin, Moses the raven, and a number of the pigs. Muriel was dead. Bluebell, Jessie, and Pincher were dead. Jones, too, was dead. He had died in an inebriate's home in another part of the county. Snowball was forgotten. Boxer was forgotten, except by the few who had known him. Clover was an old, stout mare now, stiff in the joints and with a tendency to rheumy eyes. She was 2 years past the retiring age, but in fact, no animal had ever actually retired. The talk of setting aside a corner of the pasture for superannuated animals had long since been dropped. Napoleon was now a mature boar of 24 stone. Squealer was so fat that he could with difficulty see out of his eyes. Only old Benjamin was much the same as ever, except for being a little grayer about the muzzle, and since Boxer's death, more morose and taciturn than ever. There were many more creatures on the farm now, though the increase was not so great as had been expected in earlier years. Many animals had been born to whom the rebellion was only a dim tradition, passed on by word of mouth, and others had been bought who had never heard mention of such a thing before their arrival. The farm possessed 3 horses now besides Clover. They were fine, upstanding beasts, willing workers and good comrades, but very stupid. None of them proved able to learn the alphabet beyond the letter B. They accepted everything that they were told about the rebellion and the principles of animalism, especially from Clover, for whom they had an almost filial respect. But it was doubtful whether they understood very much of it. The farm was more prosperous now and better organized. It had even been enlarged by 2 fields which had been bought from Mr. Pilkington. The windmill had been successfully completed at last, and the farm possessed a threshing machine and a hay elevator of its own, and various new buildings had been added to it. Whemper had bought himself a dog cart. The windmill, however, had not after all been used for generating electrical power. It was used for milling corn and brought in a handsome money profit. The animals were hard at work building yet another windmill. When that one was finished, so it was said, the dynamos would be installed. But the luxuries of which Snowball had once taught the animals to dream, the stalls with electric light and hot and cold water, and the 3-day week were no longer talked about. Napoleon had denounced such ideas as contrary to the spirit of animalism. The truest happiness, he said, lay in working hard and living frugally. Somehow it seemed as though the farm had grown richer without making the animals themselves any richer, except, of course, for the pigs and the dogs. Perhaps this was partly because there were so many pigs and so many dogs. It was not that these creatures did not work after their fashion. There was, as Squealer was never tired of explaining, endless work in the supervision and organization of the farm. Much of this work was of a kind that the other animals were too ignorant to understand. For example, Squealer told them that the pigs had to expend enormous labors every day upon mysterious things called files, reports, minutes, and memoranda. These were large sheets of paper which had to be closely covered with writing, and as soon as they were so covered, they were burnt in the furnace. This was of the highest importance for the welfare of the farm, Squealer said. But still, neither pigs nor dogs produced any food by their own labor, and there were very many of them, and their appetites were always good. As for the others, their life, so far as they knew, was as it had always been. They were generally hungry. They slept on straw. They drank from the pool. They labored in the fields. In winter, they were troubled by the cold, and in summer by the flies. Sometimes the older ones among them racked their dim memories and tried to determine whether in the early days of the rebellion, when Jones's expulsion was still recent, things had been better or worse than now. They could not remember. There was nothing with which they could compare their present lives. They had nothing to go upon except Squealer's lists of figures, which invariably demonstrated that everything was getting better and better. The animals found the problem insoluble. In any case, they had little time for speculating on such things now. Only old Benjamin professed to remember every detail of his long life and to know that things never had been, nor ever could be, much better or much worse. Hunger, hardship, and disappointment being, so he said, the unalterable law of life. And yet the animals never gave up hope. More, they never lost, even for an instant, their sense of honor and privilege in being members of Animal Farm. They were still the only farm in the whole county, in all England, owned and operated by animals. Not one of them, not even the youngest, not even the newcomers who had been brought from farms 10 or 20 miles away, ever ceased to marvel at that. And when they heard the gun booming and saw the green flag fluttering at the masthead, their hearts swelled with imperishable pride, and the talk turned always towards the old heroic days. The expulsion of Jones, the writing of the 7 Commandments, the great battles in which the human invaders had been defeated. None of the old dreams had been abandoned. The Republic of the Animals, which Major had foretold, when the green fields of England should be untrodden by human feet, was still believed in. Someday it was coming. It might not be soon. It might not be within the lifetime of any animal now living. But still, it was coming. Even the tune of Beasts of England was perhaps hummed here and there. At any rate, it was a fact that every animal on the farm knew it, though no one would have dared to sing it aloud. It might be that their lives were hard, and that not all of their hopes had been fulfilled. But they were conscious that they were not as other animals. If they went hungry, it was not from feeding tyrannical human beings. If they worked hard, at least they worked for themselves. No creature among them went upon 2 legs. No creature called any other creature master. All animals were equal. One day in early summer, Squealer ordered the sheep to follow him and led them out to a piece of waste ground at the other end of the farm, which had become overgrown with birch saplings. And the sheep spent the whole day there browsing at the leaves under Squealer's supervision. In the evening, he returned to the farmhouse himself, but as it was warm weather, told the sheep to stay where they were. It ended by their remaining there for a whole week, during which time the other animals saw nothing of them. Squealer was with them for the greater part of every day. He was, he said, teaching them to sing a new song, for which privacy was needed. It was just after the sheep had returned, on a pleasant evening when the animals had finished work and were making their way back to the farm buildings, that the terrified neighing of a horse sounded from the yard. Startled, the animals stopped in their tracks. It was Clover's voice. She neighed again, and all the animals broke into a gallop and rushed into the yard. Then they saw what Clover had seen. It was a pig walking on his hind legs. Yes, it was Squealer. A little awkwardly, as though not quite used to supporting his considerable bulk in that position, but with perfect balance, he was strolling across the yard. And a moment later, out from the door of the farmhouse came a long file of pigs, all walking on their hind legs. Some did it better than others. One or two were even a trifle unsteady and looked as though they would have liked the support of a stick. But every one of them made his way right round the yard successfully. Then finally there was a tremendous baying of dogs and the shrill crowing from the black cockerel. And out came Napoleon himself, majestically upright, casting haughty glances from side to side, and with his dogs gambolling round him. He carried a whip in his trotter. There was a deadly silence. Amazed, terrified, huddling together, the animals watched the long line of pigs march slowly around the yard. It was as though the world had turned upside down. Then there came a moment when the first shock had worn off, and when, in spite of everything, in spite of their terror of the dogs and of the habit developed through long years of never complaining, never criticizing, no matter what happened, they might have uttered some word of protest. But just at that moment, as though at a signal, all the sheep burst out into a tremendous bleating of 4 legs good, 2 legs better, 4 legs good, 2 legs better, 4 legs good, 2 legs better. They went on for 5 minutes without stopping. And by the time the sheep had quieted down, the chance to utter any protest had passed, for the pigs had marched back into the farmhouse. Benjamin felt a nose nuzzling at his shoulder. He looked round. It was Clover. Her old eyes looked dimmer than ever. Without saying anything, she tugged gently at his mane and led him round to the end of the big barn where the 7 commandments were written. For a minute or two, they stood gazing at the tarred wall with its white lettering. "My sight is failing," she said finally. "Even when I was young, I could not have read what was written there. But it appears to me that wall looks different. Are the 7 commandments the same as they used to be, Benjamin?" For once, Benjamin consented to break his rule, and he read out to her what was written on the wall. There was nothing there now except a single commandment. It ran, "All animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others." After that, it did not seem strange when next day the pigs who were supervising the work of the farm all carried whips in their trotters. It did not seem strange to learn that the pigs had bought themselves a wireless set, were arranging to install a telephone, and had taken out subscriptions to John Bull, Titbits, and the Daily Mirror. It did not seem strange when Napoleon was seen strolling in the farmhouse garden with a pipe in his mouth. No, not even when the pigs took Mr. Jones's clothes out of the wardrobes and put them on. Napoleon himself appearing in a black coat, rat-catcher breeches, and leather leggings, while his favorite sow appeared in the watered silk dress which Mrs. Jones had been used to wear on Sundays. A week later, in the afternoon, a number of dog carts drove up to the farm. A deputation of neighboring farmers had been invited to make a tour of inspection. They were shown all over the farm and expressed great admiration for everything they saw, especially the windmill. The animals were weeding the turnip field. They worked diligently, hardly raising their faces from the ground, and not knowing whether to be more frightened of the pigs or of the human Loud laughter and bursts of singing came from the farmhouse. Then suddenly, at the sound of the mingled voices, the animals were stricken with curiosity. What could be happening in there now that for the first time, animals and human beings were meeting on terms of equality? With one accord, they began to creep as quietly as possible into the farmhouse garden. At the gate they paused, half frightened to go on, but Clover led the way in. They tiptoed up to the house, and such animals as were tall enough peered in at the dining room window. There, round the long table, sat half a dozen farmers and half a dozen of the more eminent pigs, Napoleon himself occupying the seat of honor at the head of the table. The pigs appeared completely at ease in their chairs. The company had been enjoying a game of cards, but had broken off for the moment, evidently in order to drink a toast. The large jug was circulating, and the mugs were being refilled with beer. No one noticed the wandering faces of the animals that gazed in at the window. Mr. Pilkington of Foxwood had stood up, his mug in his hand. In a moment, he said, he would ask the present company to drink a toast. But before doing so, there were a few words that he felt it incumbent upon him to say. It was a source of great satisfaction to him, he said, and he was sure to all others present to feel that a long period of mistrust and misunderstanding had now come to an end. There had been a time, not that he or any of the present company had shared such sentiments, but there had been a time when the respected proprietors of Animal Farm had been regarded, he would not say with hostility, but perhaps with a certain measure of misgiving by their human neighbors. Unfortunate incidents had occurred. Mistaken ideas had been current. It had been felt that the existence of a farm owned and operated by pigs was somehow abnormal and was liable to have an unsettling effect in the neighborhood. Too many farmers had assumed, without due inquiry, that on such a farm a spirit of license and indiscipline would prevail. They had been nervous about the effects upon their own animals, or even upon their human employees. But all such doubts were now dispelled. Today, he and his friends had visited Animal Farm and inspected every inch of it with their own eyes. And what did they find? Not only the most up-to-date methods, but a discipline and an orderliness which should be an example to all farmers everywhere. He believed that he was right in saying that the lower animals on Animal Farm did more work and received less food than any animals in the county. Indeed, he and his fellow visitors today had observed many features which they intended to introduce on their own farms immediately. He would end his remarks, he said, by emphasizing once again the friendly feelings that subsisted and ought to subsist between Animal Farm and its neighbors. Between pigs and human beings there was not and there need not be any clash of interests whatever. Their struggles and their difficulties were one. Was not the labor problem the same everywhere? Here it became apparent that Mr. Pilkington was about to spring some carefully prepared witticism on the company, but for a moment he was too overcome by amusement to be able to utter it. After much choking, during which his various chins turned purple, he managed to get it out. If you have your lower animals to contend with, he said, we have our lower classes. This bon mot set the table in a roar. And Mr. Pilkington once again congratulated the pigs on the low rations, the long working hours, and the general absence of pampering which he had observed on Animal Farm. And now, he said finally, he would ask the company to rise to their feet and make certain that their glasses were full. Gentlemen, concluded Mr. Pilkington, gentlemen, I give you a toast to the prosperity of Animal Farm. There was enthusiastic cheering and stamping of feet. Napoleon was so gratified that he left his place and came round the table to clink his mug against Mr. Pilkington's before emptying it. When the cheering had died down, down, Napoleon, who had remained on his feet, intimated that he too had a few words to say. Like all of Napoleon's speeches, it was short and to the point. He too, he said, was happy that the period of misunderstanding was at an end. For a long time there had been rumors, circulated, he had reason to think, by some malignant enemy, that there was something subversive and even revolutionary in the outlook of himself and his colleagues. They had been credited with attempting to stir up rebellion among the animals on neighboring farms. Nothing could be further from the truth. Their sole wish, now and in the past, was to live at peace and in normal business relations with their neighbors. This farm, which he had had the honor to control, he added, was a cooperative enterprise. The title deeds, which were in his own possession, were owned by the pigs jointly. He did not believe, he said, that any of the old suspicions still lingered. But certain changes had been made recently in the routine of the farm, which should have the effect of promoting confidence still further. Hitherto, the animals on the farm had had a rather foolish custom of addressing one another as comrade. This was to be suppressed. There had also been a very strange custom, whose origin was unknown, of marching every Sunday morning past a boar's skull which was nailed to a post in the garden. This too would be suppressed, and the skull had already been buried. His visitors might have observed too the green flag which flew from the masthead. If so, they would perhaps have noted that the white hoof and horn with which it had previously been marked had now been removed. It would be a plain green flag from now onwards. He had only one criticism, he said, to make of Mr. Pilkington's excellent and neighbourly speech. Mr. Pilkington had referred throughout to Animal Farm. He could not, of course, know, for he, Napoleon, was only now for the first time announcing it, that the name Animal Farm had been abolished. Henceforward, the farm was to be known as the Manor Farm, which he believed was its correct and original name. Gentlemen, concluded Napoleon, I will give you the same toast as before, but in a different form. Fill your glasses to the brim. Gentlemen, here is my toast. To the prosperity of the Manor Farm. There was the same hearty cheering as before, and the mugs were emptied to the dregs. But as the animals outside gazed at the scene, it seemed to them that some strange thing was happening. What was it that had altered in the faces of the pigs? Clover's old dim eyes flitted from one face to another. Some of them had 5 chins, some had 4, some had 3. But what was it that seemed to be melting and changing? Then, the applause having come to an end, the company took up their cards and continued the game that had been interrupted. And the animals crept silently away. But they had not gone 20 yards when they stopped short. An uproar of voices was coming from the farmhouse. They rushed back and looked through the window again. Yes, a violent quarrel was in progress. There were shoutings, bangings on the table, sharp, suspicious glances, furious denials. The source of the trouble appeared to be that Napoleon and Mr. Pilkington had each played an ace of spades simultaneously. 12 voices were shouting in anger, and they were all alike. No question now what had happened to the faces of the pigs. The creatures outside looked from pig to man, and from man to pig, and from pig to man again. But already it was impossible to say which was which.
Okay, that's in. Thank you. I appreciate you sticking around because yeah, we're done. So be sure to go to Google Classroom tomorrow. Have a good day.